Hi, everybody. Welcome to the live session, the second one for the day. Let me introduce you to our presenters today. Mr. Ying Soy, the Program Manager, University of Hong Kong. Mr. Andy Rayburn, International Admissions and Recruitment Officer from Carleton University. And Ms. Ines Escobar from Colorado State University, Pueblo, who's taking care of the international recruitment for them. Handing over to you, Ying.
Thank you, Peru, and it is my great pleasure to be able to speak to you. As some of you may already have some background understanding of studying in Hong Kong, today I want to bring a little bit more information about how you could plan for your study if you do decide to study in this part of Asia. So first and foremost, Hong Kong is known for world-class education that are taught in English, that offered in English. As you can see in the bottom right corner, because of the nature of the universities that are publicly funded, the tuition fee and living costs are kept at a fairly reasonable level. Regardless of which program you're studying, you would approximately be spending about 30,000 US dollars a year, which cover the tuition fee plus the living costs. In terms of the actual fee structure, however, I want to be kind of just throw out a few points so that you can consider that when you do your research, like what kind of things you should look out for. Obviously, there is the application fee, deposit, potentially what kind of a tuition fee you would be paying, the accommodation, and also living costs. Those are probably the biggest expenses that you should really expect and shouldn't be very different from other universities that you do apply to. One thing I do want to mention here, that usually the universities in Hong Kong operate on a deposit basis, and the deposit usually is a fraction of how much you would be paying for the tuition fee if you do want to accept an offer. So that's also something you want to take note of if you are applying to multiple universities, and when you do get offered, you want to decide which one you want to take, and that may be a factor that you want to take into consideration as well. In terms of how to finance your study, which is the topic of today's session, certain things that you should really keep in mind: financial aids, scholarships, whether it's possible for you to study, to do work study, to take loans. In the case of Hong Kong, I believe there are very limited financial aids, if any, actually available to students, to international students who want to come in and study at one of the universities in Hong Kong. Loans, in a similar case, that actually are not offered to international students as well. So if you are looking to finance your study, other than just bringing the income from your own pocket or from whatever from your bank account or parents' bank account, what are the things that you really should pay attention to is the scholarships, and also the ability for you to work while you do take on a full-time education education. Yes, exactly, at the university. So in the case of Hong Kong, or in the case of Hong Kong U, actually most public universities in Hong Kong offer renewable merit-based scholarships based on the students' profile with no separate application. So as long as you submit an application, you will be considered for the merit-based scholarship, which can go up to a full tuition and a living subsidy, basically full ride with also no bond attachment. So that would be something that you should look out for. So you're not required to stay and work in Hong Kong, although you are able to apply for a visa extension to stay in Hong Kong. Generally speaking, it's very easy for graduates to do that. So you are able to work in Hong Kong if you wish to, but that's not required. There are other scholarships available to students as well. There may be additional selection criteria, which will be actually the next slide I will cover. In terms of full-time international students and what they can do to kind of help kind of support their study or the expenses, it is possible for students to complete the summer internships in Hong Kong while they're not on a full load of study courses, of course. And during the full-time study, they will also be able to work up to 20 hours per week on campus. So that's like another point that probably students should consider. Hong Kong is known for very expensive rents, but halls are usually provided to international students. So depending on the university, some may guarantee you to stay for 4 years, some will be at least your first year. And you can probably also consider that into the when you make your planning. So how much the hall will be cost, which usually obviously will be much cheaper than renting a flat outside. All right, so now are a few practical tips that hopefully would get you started if you are thinking about financing study towards your study in Hong Kong, and also some tips when you apply for scholarships. So first and foremost, you should definitely do your research. It's hugely important when you do your study research, just to make sure you don't miss any deadlines, to make sure you are actually fully aware of what kind of opportunities are out there, what kind of websites you can look out for this information, and to set realistic goals. Obviously, every single student would ideally want a full ride to study in a university, but also we have to kind of understand, okay, what is, like, how much are you willing to pay, how much of support you absolutely would require in order for you to complete a study in Hong Kong or in any other universities really in the world. So that's something that I believe is the most important step when you start your research. Next is whether you're eligible for the scholarships. Is the scholarship need-based or merit-based? Do they depend on your financial needs, your income, or do they depend on your application profile directly? Is there a particular country or background that you're required to have? You have to be from a particular country to apply for a particular program, for particular scholarships, or is it also specific to the program you're applying to? So in the case of Hong Kong, actually, most of the scholarships are merit-based, as I mentioned. There are some scholarships that are need-based, some scholarships that have a country requirements. Usually, you can find out all the information on the university's website as well, so that's a great place for you to start. In addition, who is evaluating the scholarships? It is by a private donor. Is it from the university directly? Is it from the government? So that would actually change certain things because, for example, the timeline of the application, when you expect to hear back, what they're looking for in the application, which lead to actually my next point about the interviews that you may be required to sit for, the essays that you may need to submit additional essays to show that you are qualified for the particular scholarships, and other supporting documents, for example, your background, your bank statement, to prove that, for example, if a scholarship actually assess your financial needs, then probably that would be something that they're looking into as well. Last but not least, how do you stand out? Chances are, if applying to scholarships, tons of other students are also applying to the same scholarships as well. So you need to really read through the website and the eligibility to see how can you stand out in the application, how do you make sure that you have the highest chance or have the best chance to present yourself, your application to someone who is worthy or qualified to receive the scholarships out of probably hundreds of students applying. So these are probably things that you can find hints from the website, from your seniors, for example, people who have applied for a similar scholarship as well, and also look out for university sessions on how students can apply to particular scholarships. So with that, I would like to pass my time to my colleague, Andy, and he will talk about his part about how to financial study in, I believe, in the US. So thank you.
Thanks, Ian. That was really informative. Everyone, I'm here to represent Canadian universities to talk to you more about what university may cost in terms of your planning for your post-secondary education. Now, first of all, the vast majority of universities in Canada are publicly funded, which means taxpayers pay a lot of money to the government to ensure that no matter where we live in Canada, we have access to a great education. This also affects the cost of tuition in each province, because of course that government pot of money must be shared amongst the institutions. Therefore, in a province that has a high concentration of universities and colleges, you'll find that the tuition may be a little bit more, or sometimes significantly more, than it would be in other provinces that may only have 1 or 2 universities in that province. So tuition will vary, but the quality of the education will not. So sometimes you think that you get what you pay for. That's not the case in Canada. You're going to be getting a world-class education no matter where you are. But it is important to look into the cost per province. There's also a range of costs for tuition by program. So the high-tech programs like engineering, computer science, IT, things like that, architecture, industrial design, they would be more expensive than, say, the Bachelor of Science programs or the Bachelor of Arts or economics and business. So that's something to consider in your research as well. Now, Canadian tuition, that includes all the miscellaneous fees for athletics and things like that, but it also includes your university health insurance for an international student. What it does not include is textbooks, housing, residence, food, etc., personal expenses. So ask each university what the cost may be for you. Now, the cost of living will also vary in Canada depending on the city in which you are studying. For example, the city of Toronto is more expensive than the city of Montreal, and the city of Vancouver is more expensive for rent and things like that than the city of Calgary, for example. And it's worth pointing out that the cost of living on campus is often a little bit more than the cost of living off campus. Here you'll see a chart, and I've converted it into Indian rupees as well, just so you can get a sense of it. But the average cost of tuition in Canada is about 23,000 US dollars, or about 17 lakhs. And of course, the average cost of living will vary by city, but to give you a sense of it, it's about $9,500 per academic year in US dollars and about 7 lakhs in rupees. There is a distinction in Canada between colleges and universities. And for full transparency, colleges tend to be more affordable than universities. They tend to cost you less, but you're getting a diploma, not a degree. So the education, the type of education you would be receiving is also different depending on whether you're studying at university or college. These numbers that I'm giving you are based upon university study, but college education is also fantastic. Once you're actually studying with us, you'll be able to work on campus or off campus up to 20 hours a week when you're enrolled as a full-time student. And you can even work full-time when you're on breaks. The minimum wage in Canada will vary by province, but on average, it's about $12.72 Canadian, which is around $10 US, or like 740 rupees per hour. You can also participate in the co-op program, which is a fantastic way to finance your studies because it is actually going to immerse you in the work environment associated with your program. So you'll be working alongside professionals who may have themselves earned the same degree you are working toward, but you're also getting paid at a very high salary, usually equivalent to starting salary in that industry. Now, co-op terms usually start at the end of the second year of university, and this would add 1 year to the amount of time it takes to complete your degree, but it's a fantastic way to get your career established and to also finance your studies. You can also use this to pursue a postgraduate work permit after you graduate, which will let you pay off any debts you may have accrued over the course of your studies. Universities will have automatic entrance scholarships, or they may be entrance scholarships that you would need to apply for. And you can ask each university separately about the scholarships that would be available to you, whether they would be automatic or whether you would need to apply for them. There's also more prestigious awards that you can apply for at each respective university as well that may be limited in number. There's also scholarships available through the Government of Canada. And since I'm often asked about this, athletic scholarships are not really a thing in Canada. You may be able to receive athletic awards that are given to you by the coaches of varsity teams, but it's not actually factored into the admission process. There's also international student bursaries at universities and colleges across Canada that you can apply for once you're actually enrolled. I've met my time, so I happily pass it off to my colleague from the United States. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're very happy to have you here. I'm going to be talking about the same topic as my colleagues, but we're going to be talking about the US, which has some, I'm sure you have a lot of questions about. One thing that you need to take into account when thinking about cost of universities in the US is first thinking about, is it a public or a private school? Both universities are going to be, you still have to pay tuition and fees, but the cost might vary between a public and a private school. Usually private school universities are more expensive, and public state universities are a bit cheaper, more affordable. There's still, you have to pay for them, but it's sometimes a bit cheaper. One thing when thinking about studying in the US is that you will see that there is tuition and fees. A lot of students, when they see the fees, they ask me, Anais, why do we have to pay fees? Well, students pay fees at universities because then that provides them for very important services on your campus, which is library services, be academic tutors, it could be the gym that you go and work out at. So those fees are there and cannot be removed. So take that into account when looking at fees, that the fees cannot be taken away. Another important factor that you have to take into account when thinking about the university cost from the tuition, which is the reason why you're there, is your living cost. Ask the university that you decide to go, do I need to live on campus? How much per semester am I going to spend on? Do you know how much insurance is? Because those are very important details, because they cost a lot of money sometimes. Like, for example, at Colorado State University Pueblo, you needed to live on campus at least for the first 2 years. After that, you can live off campus, which will make it a little bit cheaper. So just to make that clear, sometimes living on campus can be a little bit more expensive. Insurance varies from company to company, but what does each insurance company cover? That's very important as well. So if you have any health issues that you want to make sure are covered, maybe you need to go through insurance that is a bit more expensive because it will cover the health issue. So think about that. Books can be vary as well, depending. Are you able to find the book that for your class that is used, so you don't have to pay the full price? Can you rent that book? So those little tips will help you save money, but also understand how much money you're actually going to spend per semester. As you can imagine, depending on the city that you are at in the US and the state you're at, the cost will vary as well. If you go to California, probably it's going to be more expensive because most places in California are more expensive than places in Idaho, for example. So if you're looking for low cost, maybe don't go to the most popular states, go to states that are less known, because the probability of being a bit more affordable in living costs, like rent, going to the movies, anything that is related to cost of living will be cheaper on those areas. So for example, Pueblo, where Colorado State University Pueblo is the 9th most affordable city in the US. So just keep those lists in mind. Look it up online. What are the most affordable cities in the US? And everything will come up. And then you can, if living costs is something that you're thinking about, that might be something that you want to look. What are the most affordable cities? What are the most affordable states in the US? So think about that. And other costs associated things that you need to think about when applying to a university in the US is the cost of your visa appointment, the cost of you're going to receive a CVIS ID, which has a cost associated to it, how much those tickets cost if you're trying to go back home once a year. So those are costs associated with the university total cost. So think about that. Those are very important details when making your budget to go abroad in general. Then, sorry. here. So now, how to finance your studies. In the US, you're probably most of the finance of your studies will be through personal funds unless you're able to get scholarships, okay? So personal funds can be family that is going to be your sponsor, you saving up. It can be various things. Many people ask, the first question they ask is it true that you're not able to work in the US? That is completely incorrect. You're able to be a student in the US, but you only are able to work on campus. You can work up to 20 hours per week, just so you know. Is there a possibility for you to work off campus? Yes, you can. But after your first year of studies in the US, and it needs to be to your field of study. For example, if you're a software engineer, you're studying to be a software engineer, you need to find an internship that is related to software engineering. It can be through sales or arts, because that's not what you're studying. So just keep that in mind. Especially when you're working on campus, the minimum wage varies per state. So have that in mind as well. So for example, in the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C., the minimum wage is $15.45. But in the state of Colorado, where my university is at, the minimum wage is $12.32. Why is there a difference? Because the cost of living is way higher, of course, in Washington, D.C. than in Colorado. So keep those things in mind when picking where to go as well. And ask your university, is it hard to get a job on campus? Can you facilitate me help for that? Because those are services that universities are able to provide. And the most important thing, how can I get scholarships? That's the first question that most of my students ask me. It depends. It depends on each university, what they offer. In the US, we don't have something common that just comes from the government. Each universities have their own budget. Each university offers various types of scholarships. Some of the types of scholarships that universities can offer are academic, talent-based, research-based. It can be athletic scholarships, and it can be need-based. It can be country-based. There is so many things that can influence a scholarship. Athletic scholarships through the athletic departments in the U.S. universities. So, for example, if you're an athlete, I'm not able to tell you how much the coach will offer you, because the coach will be the one telling you, hey, I'm going to be offering you $10,000 in scholarships, $2,000 in scholarships for your athletic talent. So the coach is the one that decides. That mission counselor doesn't decide that. That mission counselor can see in academics, it can see in need-based if the university offers it, country-based if the university offers it. Keep that in mind. For example, at USA University Pueblo, we offer a scholarship that is only for Indian students. So that is very important. I know we're running out of time, but just wanted to let you know that.
We really have to wrap up the session now.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much to all the presenters. It was an amazing session. All the details of the presenters are on your screen now. You can now view them, and your questions are very specific, like for Canada, Hong Kong, and America. So hit them on the booth and bombard them with the questions. Thank you so much.